It was a Friday after school, the perfect night for video games, pizza, and calling friends. I just gotten off the bus, and the house was mine for the evening. My parents worked late. Mom usually rolled in after 5 and Dad about 6:30. My older brother wasn't home either, grown-up stuff, so I was thrilled to have the place to myself. I changed into my favorite comfy clothes, sweatpants, and an oversized t-shirt that was way too big to wear outside, and did my usual routine. A quick shower, snacks, then waiting for friends to log on so we could game all night. My school was strict about uniforms, so slipping into trashy loungewear at home felt like a little rebellion. A couple hours after my parents left for the party, I started to drift off. My plan to pull an all-nighter failed. I was more tired than I thought. I was half scroll, half texting, and watching YouTube when a car pulled into the driveway. I bolted upright, thinking it was my parents. I peeked through the blinds, and the headlights were shining right at my window. I ducked down so fast, I barely registered what I saw. My brain went through scenarios. Maybe Mom and Dad had someone give them a ride home? I called Mom. No answer. I cracked the blinds just enough to see the car back out and speed down the street. We live on a tiny cul-de-sac with only a handful of houses. Our place is the third to last on the right. It didn't make sense that someone would pull in just to turn around. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe they were lost. Maybe drunk. Maybe nothing. 20 minutes later, I realized the truth. The car had driven toward the dead end, where the wooded trail starts. I couldn't see all the way down from my window, and I wasn't going outside to check. I almost nodded off again when I heard yelling, sudden, harsh voices inside the house. For a second, I was frozen, half asleep, and not understanding. Then it hit me. Someone had broken in. My heart slammed, so loud I could hear it in my ears. I moved faster than I'd thought possible. Adrenaline made me sharp and clumsy at once. I had to act. There wasn't time to fight. This house is small. There are few places to hide. I scrambled for safety. My phone rang. It was Mom, but I didn't pick up. I couldn't risk making noise. I tried to open my bedroom window, planning to climb out, but it jammed. The lever wouldn't budge no matter how hard I twisted it. Panic was rising. I pushed my dresser in front of the door and hoped it would slow whoever was coming. I slid under the bed, even though I knew that's where anyone would look first. Still, there was nowhere else to go. I could hear footsteps padding down the hall, getting closer. Then a brutal knock. Not a polite tap, but a slam that shook the door. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stop myself screaming. He rattled the knob, then spoke, voice rough and close enough that I could hear every syllable. "Hey, I know you're in there. Make this easy and open up." He kept taunting me, trying to lure me out. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers and whispered into the line the whole time. The dispatcher told me help was on the way. There was an officer only a mile or two away. He said he was coming now. Those minutes crawled like forever. The intruder kept pounding and yelling. Then I heard the front door open, officers announcing themselves loudly as they entered. The man in my doorway launched at one of the officers. The officer fired. It was over in a few chaotic seconds. The intruder was hit and rushed to the hospital. He survived and later went to jail. I gave my statement, called my mom, and she and Dad came home racing. My mom hired the best lawyer she could find. We're moving forward with everything we can. I don't stay home alone like I used to. I lock every door. I sleep with the light on sometimes. The house feels smaller now in a way I don't like. Even though it ended with police and an arrest, the memory of those footsteps and that voice at my door stays with me. Years ago, my parents converted our garage into an oversized bedroom, a kind of hangout space. It had a TV, a PlayStation, and plenty of room for parties or just lounging around. I was about 10 years old when this happened, and it was only the second or third time I had been left home completely alone. My siblings were out, and my parents were on their anniversary date. Naturally, I was thrilled. I stayed up late, playing PS2 in the garage bedroom, eating snacks, and enjoying the kind of freedom a kid rarely gets. I don't remember exactly what time it was, but it was late. That's when I heard it. A tapping sound. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was part of the game. But it kept going. It wasn't random either. It was rhythmic. 4 quick taps, then 4 more, repeating over and over like someone drumming their fingers against the glass. It went on for minutes. Eventually, reality hit me. The sound wasn't coming from the game. It was coming from the window. My stomach dropped. Then came the doorknob. A rattle. A knock. I froze. Then I crept toward the door, my heart hammering in my chest. I checked the locks. Both were undone. My parents had always said that door jammed anyway, but I didn't trust it. With shaking hands, I turned both locks loudly, hoping whoever was out there would hear and know they weren't getting in. That's when I heard it. A long, heavy sigh, the sound of an older man. Then a laugh. A low, unsettling laugh that sent chills through my whole body. The knocks turned to bangs. He began slamming the door with both fists, pounding so hard the frame shook. I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen. Then silence. I saw his shadow shift toward the window. The glass was covered by a blanket, but I could see the outline of him pressing close, trying to peer in. He stayed there, watching. I held my breath, certain that if I moved, he'd hear me. Then he returned to the door. His voice cut through the quiet. "Let me in, love. I'm cold. I am hungry. Don't you want to be nice to your neighbor?" Every word made my skin crawl. I bolted. I turned off the light, sprinted to my room, and crawled into my closet. I pulled a blanket over my head and sat there in the pitch black, shaking, listening for every creak and sound until finally, hours later, I heard my parents come home. I never told them what happened. At that age, I was more afraid of getting in trouble for staying up past my bedtime than of explaining the terror I had just lived through. But even now, I can still hear that laugh. And I can still hear the way he said those words through the door. About a year ago, I was renting a small house in an economically depressed old mining town in Virginia. I lived alone. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where you notice when something is out of place. One of the first warm spring nights, I fell asleep in my living room in my recliner. Sometime around 4 in the morning, I woke to the sound of my front doorknob turning. At first, I thought someone had the wrong address, but the knob kept twisting, slow and persistent, like they were testing it. I didn't have a peephole or any windows that looked out on the porch, so I moved closer and yelled through the door, "Hey, wrong house." That's when everything escalated. The door shook violently and a fist began pounding on it over and over. A voice growled something back. Not human words, but animal-like noises that made the hairs on my arm stand up. The sounds were horrifying. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer and called the police, keeping low and listening. 2 officers arrived quickly, but by the time they reached the porch, the person was gone. They did a sweep of the property and the nearby area, but there was nobody to be found. The officers told me to call back if anything else happened and left me to try and get some sleep. I didn't go back to bed. I was too anxious and keyed up to rest. That evening at work, all I could think about was whether whoever had been at my door would come back. When I arrived home that night, everything looked normal at first. No signs of forced entry. Nothing moved. I told myself I was being paranoid. Later, around 9:30 or 10, while I was lying on the couch reading, I heard a short, sharp noise like a thud, followed by a muffled voice. My stomach dropped. The sound stopped, so I sat very still and tried to listen. Then out of nowhere came a scream, the most brutal, animalistic scream I have ever heard in my life. It was a sound that froze me to the bones. My adrenaline spiked. My mind jumped straight to the crawl space beneath the house. I debated calling the police again, but I also didn't want to be the person who made a false alarm. I decided to check it myself, carefully. I went out the back door and moved around the side of the house so I could enter the crawl space from outside. It was cramped and dark. I'd never even been inside it before that night. When I peered in, there he was, a man curled up like he was sleeping or maybe passed out on something. He looked high as hell. He had a sleeping bag, a lantern, and a stash of food. He'd basically been living under my house. I didn't say a word. I backed away, called 911 right then, and waited for the police to arrive. When the officers came, they pulled him out, checked him over, and took him to the hospital for evaluation before hauling him off to jail. He'd been living under my house for who knows how long. A lantern, a sleeping bag, and food hidden away. The idea that he'd been there without me noticing made my skin crawl. After that night, I couldn't sleep properly for weeks. I kept going over how I hadn't heard him earlier, how close he'd been, and how easily things could have gone wrong. I changed locks, installed motion lights, and slept with a knife within reach for a while. Not proud of that, but it felt necessary then. To this day, I still shiver thinking about the way he screamed and the discovery that someone had been living in the crawl space beneath my feet. It was a cold reminder that sometimes the threat is much closer than you think.